So this guy comes along and says, I'm your Republican, but I'm not your Republican. I'm for low taxes, defense spending, get rid of Obamacare, oil production, but I want to restore the interior of the country by forcing people to treat us like we treat them, whether it's Europe or Mexico or Asia, whatever. And then he says, I got to close the border because it drives down wages, and we've lost our sovereignty unless immigration is legal, measured, meritocratic, and in some manageable number. And then he, in addition, says, I'm not going to campaign like Mitt Romney and John McCain. I'm not going to play by the Marquess of Queensberry rules. And the message to people was, if I had been John McCain, Reverend Wright would have been on TV 24/7. If I had been in the debate with Mitt Romney and Candy Crawley and Barack Obama, and she had joined the opposition as moderator, I would have stopped the debate and walked out. So whether you like me or not, it's not going to be that way. We hadn't seen that since Lee Atwater tore apart Mike Dukakis in 1988 for George H.W. Bush. I'm not condoning that, but I'm just saying that people were in a mood. They felt that the Republican Party had not done much better than the Democratic Party at the national level. They lost 5 out of the 6 last popular votes. They had not won 51% since 1988. And yet they'd done very well at the state and local level. So there was this idea we're nominating these play by the Marquess of Queensberry rules, Bob Dole, George H.W. Bush, George W. Bush, John McCain, Mitt Romney, and we want somebody like Reagan who grabbed that thing and said, I'm paying for this debate. These figures come along a lot. Curtis LeMay and the Air Campaign, very cigar-chomping model for Dr. Strangelove figures. George Patton, uncouth, profane, saved the Third Army, got us to the Rhine, but immediately let go in the post-war Bavarian proconsulship because he was not fit for that. Dirty Harry, these kind of, I evoke the Western, the Shane, Searchers, these are all Westerns that a lot of people don't watch today, but the motif is always the same. You bring in this gunslinger and you're kind of, he's fearless, he has these ability to beat the enemy, the bad guys, but as he starts to bring civilization back or normality back, people start to second guess him. And that's what's happening with Trump. So many times people will say, my gosh, 3% GDP, record low unemployment, record low minority unemployment, record energy production. My gosh, the Iran deal's gone, that crazy Paris Accords finalized, Keystone, Anwar. But he tweeted about George Conway, or he's tweeting against the ghost of John McCain. Why does he do that? And now that the economy is growing at 3%, maybe somebody like Mike Pence or somebody can just take over and be nice. And you can also see the reaction of Trump. He reminds me of Ajax and Sophocles. It's why don't people give me the credit? They gave Obama a Nobel Prize. I've done more than Obama. He always says, well, I've done more, I've done this, I get no credit. But he's never going to get credit because of who he is. He's a Manhattan, Queens accented developer with a strange hairstyle and skin color, and he doesn't play the game. If he goes to the Indiana State Fair or he goes to Tulare, California or the South, it's the same Queens accent, same suit, just like you have on or I have on. Hillary doesn't do that. She's got a Southern accent here, an inner city accent here. John Kerry, when he ran, he had flannel at the state fair. Trump is authentic. He's who he is. He's unapologetic. He's also empathetic. Our farmers, our vets. And he goes to West Virginia. Hillary goes to West Virginia and she says, I'm sorry, you guys have to basically learn solar skills or something. I'm going to put you out of business. Trump goes and says, I love big, beautiful coal. You attack Donald Trump, and most of it he's retaliatory, then he's going to attack you. No matter how minor, how silly it is, he's going to retaliate to you. If you think you don't want to get down into a wrestling match with him, he's actually been in a wrestling ring. He doesn't care. And everybody who's got into an argument with him, who usually even John McCain started the argument when he said, Trump is bringing out the crazies. Trump then attacked him quite unfairly about his military, and then they were off to the races. Elizabeth Warren attacked him, and then he did the Pocahontas and the DNA. She ended up on the...
Definitely the losing end of that one, right?
I think little Marco and low energy Jeb did. So the message is, he's a coiled snake, and you don't step on him because he believes he has to bite back no matter who you are. And when you start looking at all the people that felt they were going to take down Trump, Stormy Daniels, Michael Avenatti, Michael Cohen, they didn't end up as well as Trump. He has an animal cunning yet that people don't appreciate. Trump said, you don't have to be perfect to be good. And a society, a postmodern society that's affluent and leisure, has the margin of error to double guess and triple guess and say, 160 years ago we had slavery, or we had Jim Crow 60 years ago, or women didn't get to vote until 100 years ago, and therefore we're flawed at the inception. And Trump's argument was, all people are sinful. Every country has liabilities. It's not whether we're good and they're bad, it's whether we're better than the alternative. That's all you need to be, better than the alternative, because we're a self-critical society. The second argument he made is this very process of constant self-criticism and self-debasement and apology tours and racist, sexist is demoralizing to something called the national spirit. So when you keep doing that to a society, you can't build the Hoover Dam. You can't build you can't go to the moon. You can't win World War II because you don't believe that you're any better than the alternative. And when societies have done that, Rome in the 5th century or Byzantium in the 15th century, then history says if you don't believe you're better than the alternative, what's the purpose? You have no reason to continue as an exceptional country. So that's what his message really was. That yes, we're flawed, but we're so much better than the alternative that we have to press on and be even better. Make America great, again. And people said, well, we were sexist. And he said, well, we may be sexist, we may be racist, but we were working on it, but at that time we had a spirit, and we've crushed it. And that was the message that a lot of people thought was superior to, let's just talk about how deplorable and irredeemable and crazy and clinging we are. And that was the Democratic message. I think when Barack Obama said, I think it was a week before the election of 2008, we're this close to fundamentally transforming America, what he meant was, economically, we'd be a redistributive society. You didn't build that, now's not the time to profit. At some point you made enough money. And we would be a collection of tribes. So how we looked superficially would be essential to our character. We would be Asian American, we'd be Black American, we'd be gay American, we'd be women, female American, but we wouldn't be American first. And Trump comes along and says, what society has ever succeeded? Austria-Hungary, Rwanda, Iraq, the Balkans, once you promote your tribal interest over that of the Commonwealth. We understand that we've been racist in our past, but we've always overcome that through greater laws, greater sensitivity, intermarriage, assimilation, integration. But if you say that that's cultural appropriation and I'm going to keep my tribe, are you going to hire your tribe for a bureaucratic position? Are you going to turn civil service? Are you going to let people in the university on the basis of their appearance? It's a very strange thing. The American way, when he backed the lawsuit about Asians trying to get into Harvard, I shouldn't say trying to get into Harvard, trying to get into Harvard and being accepted based on their merit in disproportionate numbers. Trump said, fine, if Harvard's 100% Asian, what's the difference between that and the NBA being 78% African American? Are we going to have Asian affirmative action for basketball? That's a very lucrative sport. It's a lot more lucrative than most people that go to Harvard. He says to himself, which issues today will allow me to make a point about Americans' founding and principle? The Covington kids, the Jussie Smollett, the Colin Kaepernick, the Kavanaugh hearings. In each one of these, there are principles of due process, right of cross-examination, presumption of innocence, appreciation for American values, the superiority of integration over separatism or tribalism, and then he pounces like a bird of prey. And people think the president shouldn't have intervened, he shouldn't have said this, but when it's all said and done, in every one of those cases, public opinion tends to be on his side. And incrementally, insidiously, he is empowering people to come forward and saying, you know what, that's fake news. I don't care if you call me a racist, call me a nationalist, I could care less. And pushing back on everything. Infanticide is legalized abortion. The idea you're going to pay Beyonce or Oprah reparations or Barack Obama is just absurd. Or the idea that you're going to not let somebody in who qualifies at the Ivy League because of his superficial appearance. Or the idea that we have to be in thrall of professional sports athletes as if they're Socratic philosophers when they're not. And when you start thinking of it, it's a very revolutionary, counter-revolutionary period we're in. And that's why people finally on the left realized, well, we weren't winning elections necessarily at the local and state level. You see the red on the geographical maps. And we didn't have 51% of the people, but we controlled Hollywood, entertainment, professional sports, the media, the university. We had such cultural power that we were able to say, gay marriage should be permissible. Next year, gay marriage has to be acceptable. Next year, gay marriage is legal. Next year, gay marriage, if you don't endorse it full-heartedly, you're a homophobe. So under Obama, we had gone on all of these social issues just at light speed. Transgenderism, transgender, women in combat, just so quickly that people, through the cultural apparatus that I just talked about. So Trump comes along and says, no, I'm going to attack all of those instances and question all of their premises, whether it's the White House Correspondents' Dinner or the Emmys or the Oscars. I'm going to call them fake news. I'm going to say they got low ratings. I'm going to say they're not profitable, whatever lever he has, but he's a 360, 24/7 saying, we're going to question all of these cultural premises, late night comedy, everything. And we'd never seen that before. We always thought that was beneath the presidency. And when they said that to Trump, he said, unpresidential, I'm new presidential, whatever that means. A man who's 72 years old, who sleeps, reported 5 hours a night, gets up every morning and looks at the world and says, today they will hate me, they will want to blow me up, shoot me, burn me, decapitate me rhetorically. Or the Mueller investigation will try to indict my son, my daughter, or they will say terrible things about my wife or my daughter or my son-in-law. And I have to go through the whole day and be told I'm a failure, I'm a buffoon, I'm a liar, and I'm going to be sued. And that's his day. So in a strange way, people are starting to look at him and say, wow, yes, he's crude, yes, he's uncouth, yes, he's a Manhattan, but he has an element of resistance, fortitude, endurance that's beyond my powers. And that oddly wins him a degree of sympathy, increasingly so, I think. We're a country that lived through, if you want your doctor, you can have your doctor. You can keep your insurance plan. That was what Obama told us. Read my lips, no new taxes. There's WMD in Iraq. So the idea was the president can say whatever he wants, we're supposed to believe him. It doesn't mean that Trump doesn't lie or exaggerate, they all do. But what he didn't lie about was, I'm going to try to close the border one way or the other. I'm going to try not to get involved overseas in new adventures. I'm going to try to get manufacturing back. I'm going to try to get GDP up. I'm going to try to drill more oil and gas. I'm going to try to deregulate. I'm going to try to get judges who are strict construct. And he did. And so now he has a record as we go into 2020. And that record, two things are happening. He's got a record this way, and the Democratic Party has gone from being Democratic to liberal to progressive to neo-socialist. So he's going to be running against not Hillary Clinton, Annie Oakley Hillary sometimes, but reparations, infanticide, Green Deal, talk of a 90% income tax rate, a wealth tax, forgive all student debt, abolish ICE, abolish electoral college, 16-year-old vote. Do any of those issues have 51% support? I don't think so.